exciting. And I wish to congratulate the, the main companies which are responsible for this evening's get together and addressing some key issues which are affecting the companies worldwide. Now, of course, there are experts from various areas of global mobility in today's conference, so I'm sure that each one of you will add both value and content. But before going any further, in my opening remarks, let me assure you that the Indo-American Chamber of Commerce is very keen on innovative ways of connecting our members to the market, as well as exploring new opportunities of making your membership of the Indo-American Chamber of Commerce both relevant and impactful. It's in that context we pick and choose the subjects in which we wish to bring people together, both members and the market. So with that kind of an objective, we just said, let's talk about the global mobility issues in today's meeting. I'm sure that each one of you have got your own definitions about what global mobility is post the pandemic. But a simple understanding as a layman of what the opportunity is and what kind of services that can really be needed by the market can be summarized by saying that this is an integration of a global mobility. The key factors which are very important are the tax, technology, immigration, and mobile administration. Fundamentally, when we are talking about taxes, technology, immigration, and mobile administration services, we are talking about making a one unified workforce across the globe. And that's a very, very key component in terms of measuring the effectiveness of today's organization, where a good percentage of it is both mobility and virtuality. So I'm sure that each one of you who are experts either in the subcontinents, subcomponents, or in the overall integration of these kind of services, I'm sure there will be a lot of relevance, and I'm sure there's going to be a vision that you will portray, which we can take this forward. Now, today, I know of a lot of companies who are now looking at India, or for that matter, to work simultaneously from multiple parts of the world, and it cannot be virtual all the time. There is a necessity for physical movement of workforce, and it's in this context the integration of all these is extremely crucial. And tax administration is also equally crucial, because now today we are talking about a global workforce which has got a multiple locational factors, and we need to address them all without any conflict of interest, either to the country from which they are working or to the individual who is operating in multiple locations. And this is, is the most appropriate team of presenters of each one of these aspects of global mobility. And I wish to kickstart today's meeting, and we should take home certain solutions and vision for the world today. Thank you very much, and go on.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your welcome address. Now I request my Vice Chairman, Mr. C. Narayan Rao, to kindly give theme address. Please, sir.
Yeah. Good evening, everybody. The objective of organizing today's webinar on emerging trends in US and global immigration, rules, regulations, and procedures is to provide right information to all our members from the leaders in those areas. In today's uncertain times and changing situation scenarios, with pandemic on one side, and within pandemic also there are certain variants of first wave, second wave, or Omicron, Delta, etc. So things were very uncertain, and the governments also looking into this area seriously, and then how to monitor this mobility of people and mobility of the technologies, etc. And again, on top of these things, the war kind of situations between Russia and Ukraine, and now between China and Taiwan and US, etc. So these situations are prompting or forcing the economies or the countries to look into more stringent or more careful immigration methodologies. The session will mainly focus on visa stamping changes pre-COVID and post-COVID, interfiling, adjustment of status, global mobility for company. As we all know, there are many visa stamping changes, mainly with regard to pre-COVID and then post-COVID. As State Department had experienced waivers of in-person interviews for certain temporary non-immigration visa applicants, and also introduction of Dropbox facility. Then interfiling and adjustment of status is also important to understand many green cards are available in EB1 and EB2 preferably categories this fiscal year. So our speakers for today's session will educate us on how interfiling works, who is eligible to interfiling. Recent US CIS guidance on interfiling, how long the process may take, etc. things. Then we will also talk about global mobility. In the present day world, including work from home, now work from anywhere is there. So there are no physical boundaries or physical barriers. Anybody can work, and a lot of rules and regulations, even in working conditions with respect to digital transactions. So those things are throwing so many challenges to the governments with respect to mainly tax complaints or accountability complaints, or mainly the immigration procedures, etc. Today's session's esteemed speakers will guide you on developing a vision, working with a multidisciplinary team, planning for relocation logistics, understanding tax implications, analyzing your employees' specific needs with each mobility decision, etc. Now, I take this opportunity to introduce our eminent speakers of today's session. We have Mr. Surya Ganesh Valmiki. He is the chairman and MD of Valmiki Consultants Private Limited. Mr. Subhakar Alapati, Director, Global Tree Careers Private Limited. Ms. Sharmila Karigula, Attorney and Senior Partner, Chuk Consultants India LLP. And Ms. Dia Matthews, Attorney and Partner, Chuk LLP, New Jersey, USA. And Shika will explain, will tell about the brief about every individual speaker. Over to Shika.
Thank you, sir. So it's a great privilege to, it's my honor and privilege to introduce our esteemed speakers for today's session. We have Mr. Surya Ganesh Valmiki. Mr. Surya Ganesh Valmiki is the chairman and managing director of Valmiki Group. He is also an educationist, entrepreneur, philanthropist, and motivational speaker. Under his vision, Valmiki FE service earned its consulting acumen over the past 20 years and has positioned itself at the vanguard of global education and immigration services. He further diversified the group's business horizon by establishing verticals in coaching and immigration services. With the vision to develop global citizens as an innovative first-generation entrepreneur, he has constantly strived to envision goals that will create a legacy for future generations. He established the Valmiki Foundation in 2008, a non-profit organization committed to provide basic needs to unserved section of society. In addition to his academic achievements, he holds a vocational qualification from Harvard Business School in corporate social responsibility and earned the certificate in business leadership from MIT. Now I'd like to introduce Mr. Subhakar Alapati. Mr. Subhakar Alapati, founder and director, Global Tree, is an experienced professional with a demonstrated history of working in the education management industry for over 15 years. He has personally handled quality students in their quest to achieve admissions in top-notch universities several times. His dedication, coupled with his strategic insights, have shaped Global Tree to a juggernaut that it is today. Mr. Alapati has also been recognized as one of the leading entrepreneurs of India, and he has been the president of Young Entrepreneurs Association in Hyderabad. Also interested in writing, he has written more than 100 articles that have been published regularly in multiple newspapers such as Forbes, The Hindu, Times of India, and Inadu. Now I'll introduce Ms. Sharmila Kaningula. Ms. Sharmila is a senior partner and attorney at Hyderabad-based Chugh Consulting India LLP. Sharmila has been awarded with Masters of Art MA and Bachelor of Law LLB by Osmania University. She completed a legal certificate program from New Jersey and possesses legal practice experience in India and the United States. She has more than 2 decades of US immigration experience and also into global immigration practice and business management. Sharmila is committed to create and foster long-standing relationship with clients. In many cases, she provides US global immigration services and continues advising on operational issues which any business may encounter. Her service include but not only limited to immigration and visa filing, business entity formation, regulatory compliance, maintaining corporate records, structuring business acquisition, handling employees' immigration issues. Now I'll introduce Ms. Dia Matthew. Ms. Dia Matthew is an attorney in Chugh Consulting India LLP based in New Jersey office. Dia joined the firm in 2008. Her practice focused primarily on business and family immigration matters. Dia received her LLM from the University of Michigan Law School in 2007, where she was a Michigan Grotius Scholar. Prior to moving to United States, she was an associate at a leading corporate law firm in India. She obtained her BL honors degree from the National Academy of Legal Studies and Research, University of Law, India, Nalsar, in 2004. Dia is admitted to practice in the New York and is also a qualified Indian lawyer. She is fluent in Hindi and Malayalam. And we also have Ms. Nirupama Das, CEO from Valmiki Group. I welcome all the speakers and thank you all for your time. And now I request Mr. Surya Ganesh Balmiki to kindly address the participants. Is there, I think a presentation is there? Okay.
Yeah, there's no presentation. Good evening, everybody, all the panelists, and thank you, Shika, for a very long intro about me. And definitely, it's a great honor to be on this IACC platform. And we have been members of IACC for close to a decade, actually. And of course, I cherish the true association where way back, even I was one of the committee members also. And you guys are really doing an awesome job. And thank you for once again for giving us an opportunity. So Valmiki Group being an educationist, so I would like to talk more about from the education perspective and where, the challenges being faced by Indian students and also keeping in view of the parents especially. So with 21 years of track records, where today we have assisted close to 1,000 plus in a year, where 30,000 students we have successfully placed with in abroad, especially for various schools. And being a specialist for US education, so we continuously do R&D and keep a track of all the schools and the emerging specializations actually. So from the education perspective today, yes, during pandemic, definitely, we have seen a lot of challenges where students, had to take up forcibly the online sessions and but it was not of much use because we constantly we were collecting the feedbacks from students who have enrolled with US school for first semester and 2 semesters, but the outcome of the feedback, it was not that great actually. So, but of course now during post pandemic, now we see the actual number of students where the numbers are growing rapidly actually. So this is the time where we felt like, yes, there has to be a holistic approach with regard to students choosing the right specializations and the right schools in US. As you're all aware that compared to all other countries, United States has tons of schools actually. When we talk about state and public funded universities and followed by private schools, so you talk about more than 5,000 plus schools. That's where Indian kids, they get confused actually. So what schools to choose, and the ranking system sometimes it varies actually. So as an educational counselor, we always guide students in how to choose the right schools, the right specializations, moving forward in terms of the jobs perspective, especially as you're aware that many students choose STEM programs. Close to 84% of the student population from India choose STEM programs, especially in the IT sector, because obviously they find a lot of OPT opportunities, and followed by. Now, in terms of current specializations, we noticed a lot of students showing much interest towards AI, artificial intelligence programs, followed by machine learning and data science. That's where, yes, there's a very few selective schools who are really ahead of other universities in terms of offering these specializations actually. So we always have that holistic approach. We guide students in terms of what specialization they can opt for, what type of schools they need to choose. And like earlier, now the students and parents need to have a minimum in the planning of at least 2 years, 18 months to 2 years planning is required if at all they really they want to opt for to pursue their masters or bachelors, especially in US alone, as we see a lot of challenges, especially during post-pandemic. As thousands of students, approaching a lot of schools, and even US schools were not prepared to handle that many students actually. So that's where some students ended up, with lots of disappointments, not getting admits on time, or the delays in getting a I-20 perspective. Then again, followed by the visa challenges. And we glad to now there is a drastic change in terms of more students getting visa slots, and I'm sure my CEO is going to talk more about the current challenges, especially the Indian students are facing post pandemic, and she will definitely share more insights. But in terms of the demand for US education, it is now increasing day by day, even though there's so many other countries are competing to get more number of Indian students. It can be UK, it can be Australia. Of course, my dear friend Shubhakar Alapati is going to highlight more about the other countries, about the demand for what kind of courses, and the immigration system, as the Global Tree is also experts in Canada, PR, and other countries. So with regard to US, even though there were a lot of apprehensions with the current, the recession impact, and after 41 years of inflation and the dollar rate going up, yes, all these challenges, definitely Indian kids and parents are a little apprehensive now, because the cost of education pre-pandemic time, now the cost of education, if you compare, there is a huge surge in terms of close to 20-25% increase with some of the private schools who are definitely they're highly ranked universities. So that's where now the challenges being faced by parents. And however, students don't want to give up actually to fulfill their dream careers, especially studying in United States actually. So we always identify the Midwestern states and the East Coast and West Coast based on the students' academic background and their affordability perspective based on their scores. So post-pandemic, we do see some schools being flexible with regard to ETS scores of GRE, TOEFL, IELTS, and SAT, and we definitely some students could get that advantage of applying to some of the top schools, and finally they got benefited in getting through even with lesser scores of because they understood during pandemic time the kind of trauma they've undergone, the kind of restrictions they had actually. So we are very happy to say that we could really extend our support to thousands of students in offering the detailed counseling sessions, and because we always have that holistic approach towards profile evaluation, and that's how we give them a calendar when they have to appear for exams, what kind of exams. That's how we offer coaching sessions, and followed by selection of the schools, and followed by, so that's how we involve parents actually. Yes, unfortunate thing is in India, some students try to abuse the system, and yes, some unscrupulous agents, they tried following shortcut methods, and that's how some students entered into trouble actually. So that's how we started an NGO called Mission Videshi Vidya in the year 2016 actually, just to educate and enlighten students. So that's how we started approaching various colleges across Hyderabad region and Andhra and Telangana region. So what we did is we conducted a lot of awareness campaigns actually, and yes, at one point of time, with the help of IACC, we invited the US Consul General, and we also conducted visa sessions. So what students need is we need to educate from time to time actually, and also making sure that they're serious about their career goals, because getting a master's or applying to US schools for bachelor's is not an easy job actually. They need to have a very, very careful planning actually. So that's how with the Mission Videshi Vidya, we reached out to more than 10 to 20,000 students, in terms of bringing that awareness actually about art of planning, about financial planning. It can be appearing for ETS examinations. So we definitely see huge demand now for US education. Thankfully, now the US consulate also announced the new embassy inauguration, of course, maybe in the month of October, hopefully, where they have close to 170 plus windows. Because today the biggest challenge for Indian students is getting a visa slots actually, and where even today lots of students are still looking forward to get more visa slots actually. And finally, moving forward 2023, so we don't see that kind of challenges where in terms of getting visa slots actually. So we are hopeful that 2023 again the demand for US education will continue to grow, even though the recession impact will be there or not. So but students will never stop applying to various US schools actually. And with our R&D and innovation lab, so we always explore more number of innovative programs, and we guide students, and and that's how we help students in fulfilling their career dreams actually, followed by even non-US countries also. So I'll not take much of that time now, so definitely I will leave the platform now open to my colleague, and of course my CEO is going to highlight a few more valid points actually. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Valmiki. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for this opportunity. So I'll just highlight on a few areas coming from the student perspective for the F1 visas, what we have seen pre-COVID and post-COVID. Pre-COVID was a different scenario altogether because there were a lot of opportunities for students. So until early 2020, when we talk about spring 2020, students had a lot of time. A lot of time was available to students. Students probably were not scared about any visa interviews or availability of visa slots, or the kind of programs or admissions probably was not that challenging then. But post-COVID, things have really taken a different U-turn altogether. And I believe with all the experience that we have and with the students that we interact on a day-to-day basis, what we observed and our experience says that universities are overloaded with applications and student inquiries. So I think if future students should be well prepared, should be planning well in advance, in case they're willing to be there in the right intake. So earlier it was probably if anybody would want to go to the US, 3 months, 4 months of preparation should be sufficient. But today, out of the experience that we have, if you're wanting to apply and get into the right school, be there and have your appointment on time, your visa appointment on time, I think a solid preparation of at least 9 months in advance is advised for all students who are planning to go for this, for the upcoming intake, let's say spring. I think by August, September, you should be having your choices made because admissions are a challenge today. Universities are flooded with applications. So it is very important that every parent, student who are aspiring to send their kids or students as such who are dreaming to go to the US should be aware of what universities to apply for, what programs will give them faster admits, what are the programs that is going to have a better career prospects. They have to be understanding the good specialized courses, as Mr. Valmiki mentioned earlier, that we have seen students opt for very niche programs, different programs, and not the regular programs or the regular specializations. So with students with new program, especially based out of Hyderabad, we see a lot of regional students, and these students are STEM-based, looking for STEM-based programs. Right. So, and mostly in the space of engineering, but we have seen a huge increase in science programs as well. Students are more inclined towards health related programs, and also for very non-regular or probably very not the typical kind of program. Students are interested for hospitality courses. Students are interested for pharmacy related programs. So I think there is so much that students can explore and not go through just the conventional programs. There are so many options in the US that students can choose from, but they will be able to make it only if they have planned well in advance to get into the right university and the right program. Coming to the visa challenges, yes, last year I think there were about 60,000 plus students whose visas were approved last year, but this year the US consulate is confident enough of accommodating 100,000 appointments to be able to give for students. So that is a very good sign for students, which means that US is a welcoming destination. They really want to have students. But on the other side, I think the US consulate is also looking at quality students, which means students who are well prepared, students who are confident about for what purpose they're going to the US. So I think with just a little time that I have, I would probably advise all students to be well prepared, have your choices made well in advance so that you can make it to the right university in the right time, rather than wasting time and falling lure to all shortcut methods. As Mr. Valmiki said, there are a lot of unscrupulous agents in the market who probably will guide you to, to the most unethical methods. But I think if you are a quality student and if you really deserve or want to have the best of the system, the only option is that you have to know the art of approach and well planned. You have to be well planned in advance. So hoping that we'll be able to cater to a lot of questions towards the end of the session and thereafter. Thank you so much, Shikha, for this opportunity. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Nirupama. Thanks a lot. Now I request Mr. Shubhakar Alapatis to kindly address the attendees. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. It's a pleasant evening, and I'm really happy to be a part of this IACC panelist session. It's actually an honor because I remember being a part of this session long ago, pre-COVID. And thank you very much, IACC, and my fellow panelists, Ganesh, Nirupama, Ms. Sharmila, and Dia. Good evening to you as well, and all the attendees who are a part of the session. Prerna, can we have the presentation, please? So today, what we're going to talk about is a little changes what we have seen between pre-COVID and post-COVID, and also how's the global mobility affected in terms of the overall international market. So before we go to the actual scenario, we'll try to understand what has COVID posed the challenge for us. So when the outbreak of COVID-19 happened in the world, the whole world was at a very crucial time of international migration. Just prior to March of 2020, all the countries, whether it be USA, Canada, Australia, they were recording the highest number of migration numbers across the globe. Around this time, I think 2020 was supposed to be a bigger year than 2019. That's what was expected from almost all the countries. And this COVID-19 has really created the all around the world and around the consulates. The COVID-19 outbreak had disruption all over the world, whether it be the universities, whether it be consulates, and everything had to come to a grinding halt, and including the business travel or the tourism, whatever. So travel across the globe came to a grinding halt. And even though things have gotten better in the last few months, even now the visas or the travel is not back to pre-COVID levels. And the restrictions were very different. Some countries were welcoming, some countries were having restrictions, some countries who had a zero tolerance policy. So we really didn't have an idea how to go about it. So the first few months was more like we were waiting and wanting to see what was going to happen. And as it went by and when things started moving better and the second wave came in, I think there was a complete confusion and chaos. And I hope that, we don't have to see such kind of a situation again. And I think one of the other area where there was a real big challenge, I think, was the students. The number of students who were going abroad went very, very low, and also they had to defer their plans. So first we will look at Canada. How was the pre-COVID levels, and then how did it come to post-COVID? So when you look at the pre-COVID levels, the non-essential visitor visas were being processed, and we were able to get slots very frequently. But post-COVID, until very recently, the non-essential visitor visas were completely suspended. No applications were being processed, and students were, the visitors were not allowed until last year. And whereas generally the student visa files under SDS category would have got a decision in less than 30 days, now it is taking 90 days, and we even have cases where students are not able to get a result after 6 months. And we have something called SDS and non-SDS category, but in the non-SDS category is generally the category where you take where it takes a little longer time and where the student has not paid the fees and in advance. It used to take a longer time, and right now with the non-SDS category, we really don't have an idea where exactly it is headed. It's taking more than 6 months, as I said. And particularly for immigration prospective clients, the processing used to take between 6 to 8 months with the draw from the express entry drive and then applying for a PPR and then getting the visa stamped and to enter into Canada. It used to take around 6 to 8 months. Right, literally between 2020 and 2021, the PR applications were completely stopped. And right now, even after when they have started, I think it's taking over a year to be processed. And what was a very pitisome situation for some of our clients was that the passport submission PPR, which generally used to be after 3-4 months, that is, a PPR is requested by the client when they have completed all the process and they are already selected for a permanent residency. The request comes in so that their passport is stamped and they can travel to Canada. Right now, it is taking a year and a half. I have had clients who had actually got a PPR just pre-COVID, and they just got a request to submit the passports in the last couple of months. So it has been really testing time for people because they already had job ready there and they had done, and these people were ready with their families, but it was really testing times for them. But I think now that Canada has told that they're going to speed up the process, I think it's going to be an easier thing. And in terms of the students, I think online classes were not a point to go for before pre-COVID because they were not going to get a post-study work opportunities. But whereas once the COVID hit, I think Canadian government was one of the very first governments across the globe which said that even if a student extended his online education up to a year, they would still not get any effect on their post-study work rights. For students who want to go and study abroad, for them, post-study work rights and settlement opportunities are one of the key opportunities, and Canada and Australia are very key for them. And with this provision of post-COVID of doing online education, it really helped them, right? And for biometrics, for student visa applications, all of these are taking a much longer time. So if we see the graph, in the last decade or so, or maybe actually in 20 years, before COVID hit across the globe, there was a continuous growth in the number of students who were going to Canada to study, where it started just above 1 lakh in 2000, went up to 600,000 students wanting to entering into Canada to study abroad. So it was the first time in over 20 years that the Canadian education saw a 7% decrease of the number of international students coming into Canada. And it looks like it's getting a little better in 2021, and we hope that it will be able to go back to the regular numbers post this year. If you're talking about USA, I think one of the very regular calls I receive from friends and family is, can you help us in getting a visa slot? Whether it be a visitor, whether it be a tourist, whether it be a business, whether it be a H1, whether it be a student. Generally, pre-COVID, if we had to look for a visa slot for a student or anyone, it would have taken 15 to 45 days, a max, to find a slot. Right now, for the students, it's taking anywhere between 2 to 3 months. And if you're talking about a tourist or a business visa, B1, B2s, it looks like it's taking forever. I have had a lot of people asking for me, and we are really helpless because the US Embassy is really not opening up slots for people to come and take it up. And I hope the visa session, the student visa session is going to get over in the next month or so, and we might have these slots opening up. And as my friend Ganesh Valmiki told, that we are expecting the new consulate facility to come up in Hyderabad, so there'll be more and more opportunity. Another challenge during the COVID and post-COVID has been that the embassy is not working in full capacities, and the employees who left to the US have not come back completely. So that is, and during the pandemic, it went down as low as 20%, currently it's around 50% or more. Once we have a full strength, I think the visa slots will not be a challenge. And the processing time for the H1B visas generally is high. It takes around a couple of months. Sometimes in very rare cases where they're asking for some documentation would have taken longer. But right now, post-COVID, it has actually helped a little bit in bringing down the processing time because of the review system of H1B. It has come a little lower, but again, getting the slot is a little challenging. Hope that once the slots become regular, I think it will be very easy for them to come on for these things. And in terms of students who have gone to the US, one challenge they have faced after post-COVID is that finding the on-campus jobs. Before COVID, people used to have a lot of advantage of having on-campus jobs because of the campus being abundant with students and people and a lot of activity. With people going for remote classes and all those things, one challenge students are facing is finding a job, but I think it should not be a on-campus job, which should not be a problem anymore. And one thing I've always observed is there has always been, right from the beginning, the greatest of interest for students to go and study abroad for US. Of all the countries we deal, I think US has got the highest interest for students wanting to go abroad. It has not come down for sure as a study destination, but the numbers have really come down drastically because of the travel restrictions and because of people fearing that what would happen if they travel, particularly around the 2020 and earlier part of 21, because USA was the country with highest number of active COVID-19 cases. But I hope that will never, that we don't see that as a point of concern right now, as we see more and more students going for the USA for studies now. So this is just the historical census of the migration in the US, which has been on a continuous growth numbers until 2019. As you see, there has always been a minimum of thousands of number of moving into the US year on year. I think one interesting thing what has happened for India is that the United Kingdom has been, I think, very, very friendly in the COVID times. UK is the most popular destination after the US, and I think UK was UK is the first country which opened the doors for the Indian students or the visitors to come and study there or visit there before any other country did. And I think the UK has been a savior for a lot of students who wanted to study abroad, as US was not clear until September, end of August or September, about letting Indian students come in. And as my other panelists said, the hybrid education or online education has been never an area of interest for students from India. So UK took the advantage of it, and post Brexit, it was in real need of students, as a lot of students from Europe were getting lower. So UK became the top destination for international students in 2020. And they came up post Brexit, and just before COVID happening, UK had the biggest advantage of introducing the post-study work rights of up to 2 years for every student. And UK has been a popular destination for students, as it generally needs just a 1 year to finish their masters and 3 years to finish in bachelor's, unlike in many other countries where master requires 2 years and 4 years for bachelor's. They were very flexible in terms of extending the validity of the CAS, which used to be for 6 months, which they have extended twice to make it many more months valid. One good thing what UK did, along which many countries have failed, is adding up priority and super priority visas. Pre-COVID time, just before COVID, they started this priority visas. In priority visas, the visas are processed, whether it be a student or a visitor or a business visa, within 7 working days. And in super priority, I think it's a great thing that they actually process in just 1 day. But during COVID, they were suspended for quite a few months, and now they are back to the regular procedure of getting visas of priority and super priority. And with the post-study work rights, which I've said has been very useful. And the hybrid learning also has been a good feasible option for all students, because even if they had done a semester or so during COVID time, they were still getting all the education and advantages of post-study work rights. And also UK was the first country to start the visitor visa, and also which was the one who gave the options for people to come without a RT-PCR if they were fully vaccinated, and also came up with the no mask rule around the world as a first country. The scenario with Australia was very different. I think Australia was one of the first countries to activate the zero COVID tolerance policy, where they had sealed the borders and they had not allowed even the citizens for a long time. They had given a specific time, and even if someone had come during these times, they were with a strict policy of 14 days of isolation, and they were not allowing any other people, any other valid visa holders or students. I think until early 2022, they were not allowing anyone to come in. So with even after vaccination, they were not being allowed, and this really caused a dent to Australia. Australia was one of the famous has become a famous destination in the recent times, in the last decade and the last couple of decades. But with this, it really kind of caused a lot of challenge for the students and it hampered their plans. Of course, Australia is one of the countries where look for settlement. People want to go work and settle down there. So of course, there was no offline courses. But post-COVID, they allowed up to a year of hybrid session where they could study online and they could defer their programs also. The processing time for the work, when we look at the work permits, the processing time for work permit was 3 to 6 months, but with a complete halt in the last 1.5 years for the work permits not being done, right now it is taking a little more than 1 year for people to get the reports done. So the average annual enrollments pre-COVID in Australia was increasing by over 7% at least for the last 5 years. But since they had a zero tolerance policy for COVID, Australia witnessed a 17% decline in international enrollments. The e-visa processing took just a couple of weeks or maybe sometimes just a couple of days to get an approval. Right now, post-COVID, I think in early 2022, they have actually started the processing, but it's still taking a minimum of 4 weeks and sometimes much more than that. So if you see again, like as I said in the beginning of my presentation, that if you see that before COVID, all these countries, they were looking at a very high growth or very large numbers or record numbers in terms of migration happening into those countries. With this challenge happening of COVID, I think almost all of them have seen a decline, and particularly Australia has seen a loss of 89,000 people migrating into Australia. That is the second lowest in the history of Australia. Yes, like other countries, Europe also had a lot of challenges in terms of allowing migrants to come in. They also had a lot of restrictions, but since Europe being a combination of a lot of small countries and medium-sized countries, everyone had their own restrictions and everyone had limiting conditions. So the number of people who were migrating before to EU until 2020 was around 3.3 million, but it went down to 2.2 million in the year next to COVID happened. And I think more and more countries are opening up. And I think Europe has been a favorite destination for people around the globe as a tourist destination also. That also took a very low, very big hit and had very low tourists coming into Europe. So as I said, almost a million number of people were less getting into whole of Europe in the year 2020-2021. So I think Germany is another area where people look for going and studying, and also for studies as well. Like most of the other countries, we could see that, you know, the number of people who were going there went on increasing year on year, but Germany had increased by 1.8% at the end of 2020, which was the lowest because they were one of the other countries which opened up very early when compared to the other countries. So as you see the graph, the student population grew by 6% in the year before pandemic hit, whereas if you see that overall in the year of 2020 and 2021, they were one of the first countries to open up. So they saw a small decline, but they were still able to continue the graph. One interesting factor, what would be very big advantage for Indian students right now is the Chinese influence. Pre-COVID, I think China was way ahead, whether it be in migration or whether it be in student visas all across the globe than India, China being the largest population across the globe. But with the COVID influence, where people have started believing or have felt that China was one of the source of COVID, and being cornered, China also didn't want their students to go and study abroad. And I can say that this has been a boon in the making for the Indian students or the Indian migrants. So if you look at the numbers across the globe, we have always been behind China in terms of students or the number of people migrating. Maybe migrating in a couple of countries, India is ahead of China, but students, they have been the biggest contributor. So with these China influence, if you see that, the number of new students from China, pre-pandemic levels to post-pandemic levels has gone down by 27%. So I think that is going to be a big advantage for the Indian students, because the universities all across the globe, whether it be USA, Canada, UK, or Australia, they need more students to come into their country, international students. So with this COVID outbreak, it looks like the Indian students and Indian migration population will have an advantage in all the countries. If you look at the numbers, these have been the numbers pre-COVID levels. The majority of international students studying in the US, the major have been China and India, whereas China was almost double the number of India pre-COVID levels. But with the current scenario, it looks like maybe in the next couple of years, India will easily overtake China in terms of the number of Indian students going and studying abroad. If you look at the same way in terms of other countries, whether it be UK, Australia, all these countries, in the year 2019 and 20, in UK, the number of Chinese students were almost 3 times of Indian students, 1,20,000 versus 41,000. And in Australia, there were 2,11,000 versus 35,000 Indian new students. Whereas in 2021, you could see that in the numbers which were looking for the Indian and Chinese students have started increasing. Particularly, I think the 21-22, you can go to the next slide. So the number of Chinese and Indian students, what we have been seeing has started slowly changing, and we are expecting with the current scenario, it will really change. So before I conclude, I would just want to sum it up. What has COVID-19 completely changed? First thing, I think promoting hybrid education. And another important thing is standardized tests becoming optional, particularly the GRE, SATs, and GMATs, which were compulsory for most of the schools, for the students to enter into the schools. They looks like they have become an optional. Even now, for this intake, some universities have become or have given that option. And universities have started claiming to improve student services in terms of their hygiene, in terms of their safety, in terms of their student support services. That is a very good thing for them. And one thing which has been a real big problem is the delayed visa processing, which is really, really going to take much longer than that. And also what has happened is this has created a lot of confusion for students to drop their education plans, or people who wanted to migrate or work to put them on hold or defer them for at least a year, or some people had to kind of completely check them up, and unavailability of slots, processing getting challenging, and of course, high rate of flight tickets. It's been really challenging. I'm traveling to London next week and a couple of months later to the US. I have never seen the ticket prices at this level. It's been like very surprising for anyone to look at, because we had never expected these kind of flight tickets. Even after all these challenges, we have seen that, the international migration has not stopped and the interest has not stopped. So what changes could we see in the near future? What we have seen is, despite the uncertainty and complication, 91% of the Indians who wanted to study abroad or who wanted to migrate abroad, they are still very keen and interested. And we see that, as the COVID restrictions go down, it is going to go higher. So we are just expecting that in the coming couple of years, the numbers will be going to pre-COVID levels or maybe higher than the pre-COVID levels. And as I said, with the Chinese influence getting a shot in their arm, it looks like the international students or universities wanting Indian students to go and study abroad is going to go higher. And maybe in the next couple of months, we are expecting all the embassies to work in full capacities so that they could really work on the applications to be faster and have the full staff working there. One good thing which has happened is about the blended and flexible learning. I think students and the universities are now open to the idea that maybe doing a semester or a few courses online might not hurt them. In this way, particularly for students anywhere in India, they'll be able to save a little and still be at home because of the travel expenditure, or whether it be about boarding expenditure, it is going to save. I think this is going to be a good advantage. And particularly on the overall front, what I look at my perspective, whether it be of student or the migration, it is going to go further and it is going to really cross the pre-COVID levels. Thank you everyone for giving this opportunity. Global Tree always strives and make sure that it helps an extended arm, whether it be for students or for immigration or for any other visas. And we would always like to keep doing the same. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Alapati, for such an educative and informative address. Now I request Ms. Sharmila to kindly address the participants, please.
Thanks, Shika. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, but your voice is it's echoing actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
1 second. How about now? Hello, Shika.
Yeah.
Are you able to hear me now?
Yeah, this is better. Yeah. Please. Yeah.
Sorry about that. Hello and good evening, everyone. Hope all is well. First and foremost, I would like to thank IACC for arranging this session, and a special thanks to US consulates, of course, for developments they have been making from, I've seen like people standing overnight on visa lines to Dropbox and few others logical moves. So that's good on their part, that's fantastic. Looks like the previous speakers, most of the points and discussions have already been covered about visas and global immigration at practice front. Now maybe let us concentrate briefly on changes in rules and regulations pre and post COVID by USCIS and also the State Departments who have been involved in the consulates, and global corporate changes as well, like where the headquarters has been moved and so many changes at the global level, because the visas and the immigration point has been already been captured. So now post-COVID, people are taking time and reassessing their lives. Basically, if you look at stats, USA, Canada, and UK are the driving force and global leaders of international migration. So most skilled professions decide to move these countries to diverse immigration pathways, aligned with the fast processing maybe. Post-COVID, the trend has changed. There is a significant preference shift towards the other developing countries due to the pandemic. So maybe like due to the low population and shortage of skilled workers in those countries such as Australia, New Zealand, Germany, Japan, Italy, and other EU countries. Now, people are now aiming to migrate to these countries. Could be due to COVID impact, overall low population and low level birth rate, elevation in economy as well maybe. So the developed countries such as Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, and EU countries, especially Germany, face an acute shortage of skilled workers due to the low population and aging population and low birth rate, even within the EU members countries, there is a disparity in development parameters driving mobility. Japan is termed the demographic time bomb by media because the young people in the country are deciding to forego having children. As a result, the population is projected to lose 20.7 million people in the coming years. And the shrink in the total population will go from somewhere 126.5 million to 105.8 million with a staggering 16.3% decline. Of course, Italy is also the victim of declining population, which is expected to shrink from 61 million to 28 million. So according to World Bank data, another issue is the aging population, wherein over 23% of Italian people are over 65 years. So obviously the youngsters are needed there. And Italy, Portugal, Greece, encouraging investment migration with golden visa offerings as well. The UK is changing its immigration landscape in the wake of Brexit, which may present opportunities for Indians as the country shifts away from migration from Europe. So if you look at US getting visa slot and current trends on various visa categories, pre-COVID and post-COVID, let us look at the changes happened from the consulates. So about the Dropbox eligibility for the non-immigrant visas, pre-COVID, it was like if the visa has been expired, like within last 2 months, they were eligible for the Dropbox. But post-COVID, they have moved to 48 months now. I think that made a lot of difference, like, for the visa slots also, like, people getting the visas, because like, whose ever visa have been expired within 48 months, they're eligible to kind of go for the Dropbox as well. And there was another thing that has been introduced by the consulate, it's the interview waiver program. Pre-COVID, it was not there. But post-COVID, previously received a visa from the United States, like any person who received a visa from the United States in any category and never been denied a visa to the United States. So currently this program is valid till December 31st, 2022. So State Department expands waivers of in-person interviews for certain temporary non-immigrant visa applicants, and based on this. The new authorization applies to temporary workers applying for H1, H3, all these non-immigrant visas like H4, L, O, P, and Q visas who meet certain conditions, including that they're applying for a visa in their country of nationality or residence. Additionally, the Secretary of State has extended consular offices ability to waive the in-person interview through December 31st, 2022, for the following other categories of non-immigrant visas: temporarily agriculture and non-agriculture workers, H2 visas, and students F&M visas, and student exchange visas, academic J visas as well. Appointments before COVID, like it was adequately available, reasonably adequately available. Now until July 2022, we have significant delays, like 6 months to 12 months wait time in getting appointments for work visas. Currently, we observe that work visas are available with a wait time from a month up to 3 months. Like very recently, we have been observing that, and it is getting filled very soon. The demand for US visas in India is currently higher than it was prior to the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. I think so. And there was a new requirement about the capture requirement for slot booking. Before it was not there with pre-COVID, now it is applicable. In recent months, the US consulates have introduced a few measures to combat the abuse of scheduling system for non-immigrant visa applicants. For instance, the system now includes a capture test to prevent agents from using bots to grab available visa appointment slots. So this is a precautionary measure they have taken. And the US consulates in India have also stopped announcing the specific dates that new appointment slots will be made available. When we talk about the immigrant visas, this is for the family-based and the employment-based. So within 3 months before COVID, NVCs accepted for all requested documentation. Currently, as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, most consular posts are operating at a limited capacity, and it is taking somewhere from 3 months to 9 months at a limited capacity as they work through a backlog of immigrant visa applications, and scheduling may take significantly longer. So that is a short note on the changes happened very recently, pre and post-COVID on the visa front. Let us also kind of, throw some light on the global immigration front. So when we say global migration is immigrating people from one place to another globally, anywhere in the world. It could be a non-immigrant status or immigrants or citizens with respect to visa category. So basically defined as movement of people across borders, but whereas the global mobility is about moving the workforce itself. Mobility broadens the discourse to include the relational dynamics between people, objects, and also the ideas that are all mobile. So, so I think most of the points are also covered in the global immigration front as well. As a practitioners, the comparison between all the countries are also made. So the only point, like at this point of the time, what I want to stretch, stress is the headquarters moving from one place to another. So so what I would say is, because this, with the practice we have been seeing, like, the companies are moving from one place to other, for systems and processes needed in the future could be like, various reasons for doing this, and could be like sophisticated to maintain the supply chain management. And because company procurement departments are increasingly becoming interested in helping to manage the global mobility supply chain, primarily because of the increasing scope and cost of these services, and could be the global payroll systems and travel tracking as well. There will be like so many strategic relocations, and could be the communicate for a reference program to become successful. It takes two parties to be on the same page, right? So the relocated employees and the senior level HR staff who formulate and implement the global mobility strategy in the company. As long as there is effective communication between these two, so that strategy works as the overall company goals suffer. So also like to streamline the process from various departments and also between the countries. As mentioned earlier, going overboard with costs associated with the global mobility program, right, happens quite often and is an indicator of poor management of the global relocation process as well. So when we think about why do companies need a global mobility strategy, regardless of whether you run a small business or head a multinational corporation, mobilizing your workforce as quickly and as seamlessly as possible is going to empower your business to earn more revenue faster than ever before. So a strong global mobility strategy will, of course, take a lot of teamwork and time to create businesses, especially small business might wonder why they should spend so much time and effort on strategy that affects only one aspect of their operations. So only so many employees go abroad and to work each year, and making one-off plans when this opportunity arises does work, even if it's a little inefficient, right? So, but there's a big problem there with bypassing a global mobility strategy. Global expansion is on the rise, and businesses that want to continue grow are going to have to send their teams abroad, right? So it is to their benefit to create a comprehensive plan for deploying and managing their international talent as they continue to scale and relocate across the world. In fact, actually 88% of the business leaders agree that building a future-oriented organization is an important issue. So saying that, I would pass the discussions to Dia Matthews in front of the I-485 interfilings. Thank you so much, Shika.
Thank you, Sharmila. Now I request Dia to kindly take over, please.
Will do. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. And I think it was very informative. Everybody spoke really well. I believe we are a little behind schedule, so I'll keep my remarks as short as possible.
No problem. We can extend 5-10 minutes. That's not okay.
Okay. All right. So I'm here to talk about adjustment of status filings in the US. This is basically the I-485 form. And this is the last stage, usually in the green card process for most individuals, especially Indian nationals, because they have a long wait time, right? So by the time the priority date becomes current and they are eligible for adjustment of status, there's usually a lot of anxiety and excitement around it. And in the last 2 years, since October 2020 or so, we've been very busy because there was an unexpected move in the priority dates for Indian nationals in both the EB2 and EB3 categories, which are the commonly sought employment categories for Indian nationals. So we've seen a surge in applications, and there are a lot of questions around it, also around the categories, the EB2, EB3, and that sort of thing. So just main things to keep in mind, and this is what I tell our client when they're coming to us for adjustment of status filing. First thing to check is whether the person has maintained status. So whether you came as a student, or as an employee to the US, or you got married and you came, you should have always maintained status. There should not be any gaps in lawful status. There should not be any unauthorized employment. So those are a few things to be mindful of. The second, topic, usually for Indian nationals, is the birth certificate, because the birth certificate from your country of birth is a priority for adjustment applications. And there are certain requirements that the US government puts in place for birth certificates. For India, since birth certificates are required to be registered, births are required to be registered after 1970 or so, there is an expectation that you will produce something from the municipality. So either a birth certificate issued by the municipality or a non-availability certificate from the municipality saying that there is no record of your birth being registered. So either of these, and it's also helpful to have some secondary documentation. So if your birth was not registered exactly in the format that they want, etc., then it's also a good idea to include some secondary evidence. And secondary evidence is any document that was older in time, like a school living certificate, and or you could give your ration card, your PAN card, Aadhaar card, all of these documents. The older they are, the better, and they should have your name, your date of birth, and preferably the names of your parents as well, right? So those are things that we normally recommend in terms of the birth certificates. Then the medical certificates, because you have to show that you don't have any major health hazards, that you don't have any communicable diseases, and you won't end up being a liability, right? So that's the whole purpose of the medical certificates, the I-693 form. You have the option of submitting it at the initial stage with the adjustment application, or under the regulations, you can give it any time before the case is adjudicated. So the best practice is always to give the medicals upfront when you initially file the adjustment application. And then I guess in terms of timelines, once you file the application, then the question that we get from our clients all the time is, how soon will I get my green card? And really, it's been a mixed bag. We've had some cases get approved in 2 months, maybe even a month of filing. Those are probably very straightforward cases. But the majority of cases probably take about, I think these days we're seeing, 12 to 18 months. That's the published processing time from USCIS for adjustment applications. And if you're lucky, then the case gets approved faster. In many cases, we see that USCIS also makes an effort to waive the fingerprint. So the process is that you file the adjustment application, then they call you for fingerprinting or the biometrics, which is usually within 2 months. And then the case is adjudicated. So in a lot of cases, especially with the pandemic, and all of that, they tried waiving the fingerprint requirement if they have the fingerprints already on file from a prior case. One of the welcome changes in the last couple of years was the removal of the public charge rule. So some of you may remember about 2 years ago, the US government under the Trump administration implemented the public charge rule, which is basically to make sure that a new immigrant does not pose a burden for the government, that they will not end up being a public burden. So the main way of looking at it was, that the applicant had to show that they had enough financial ability to support themselves, that there's no major liabilities. So we had a very extensive form, the form 944, which asked for a disclosure of all the assets, liabilities, education. It was, I think, about 10 to 15 pages, and there was usually a lot of documentation, credit reports, and things like that we had to give. So luckily, that's now been, that was challenged in court, and that rule has been taken out. So that makes the process of filing for the adjustment much simpler these days. Okay. All right. So now coming to interfiling. So that's the hot topic in the last, I would say, 10 months or so. So what happened was in October 2020, when the priority dates for Indian nationals started moving, and contrary to the previous trend, we could see that the priority date was moving faster for the EB3 category, which has lower requirements. So when the EB3 category started moving faster, a lot of people filed for a downgrade, which is, they were switching to the EB3 category, and then they filed for adjustment based on that. Subsequently, when the US government realized, the USCIS realized that they had received more EB3, more applications in the EB3 category, then they slowed down the EB3 queue, and the EB2 queue started moving faster. So now, of course, all applicants wanted to be considered in the EB2 queue. So they were trying to get back into the EB2 queue, and for a little bit of time, there was uncertainty. Should we refile the adjustment application in EB2, or should we just, wait it out in EB3? Can we just ask the US government to approve our 485 in EB2 based on the fact that we already have the EB3 adjustment application pending, etc. So finally, the USCIS issued clarification at the beginning of this year in January 2022. They issued a clarification. They said, don't file any new adjustment applications. If you already have an adjustment application in the queue, then under the regulations also, you can ask USCIS to use that adjustment application and approve you for an EB2. So that's the whole concept of interfiling, right? And so after that, there's been a lot of interfile requests filed since the beginning of this year. Now, when does it make sense to put in the interfile request? So you should put in the interfile request only if your priority date in the EB2 category is current according to Table A. So in the visa bulletin, which is a document issued by the government every month, there's two tables. So it has to be, your date has to be current according to Table A in order to be eligible for interfiling. So interfiling is a fairly straightforward process. I mean, it's important to review the file carefully and see if the person actually is eligible, but you just inform the government that there is a 485 application pending, and that there is an EB2 case that the person, and the date is now current in EB2, and you're just asking the government to connect the two and approve the case. So one would think it's fairly simple. I mean, it shouldn't take too long. Once the officer reviews the file and sees, the case numbers and everything. But due to the sheer number of cases involved, things have not been moving as quickly as we expected. So even to get a receipt notice for the interfile request, I think we were seeing delays of more than 2 months. And then, of course, the question is how quickly will they adjudicate the case? So what the US government has said is that they will try to finish all these cases, the EB2 cases, by the end of the fiscal year, which is by September 30th of this year. So it seems that they are trying to work through the caseload, make sure that they have all the documentation. So for people who didn't file the medicals, they issue RFEs. Sometimes the officer will just call you on your phone and, just say, hey, can you just send in the medicals? I'm just trying to approve the case. So they're also trying to finish these. And my expectation is by September, we'll probably see a lot of approvals. And they'll close out most of these cases. The last point, I guess, is travel. Yeah, so I get a lot of questions about travel when adjustment application is pending. So the question is, most people who are working here on a visa, like an H-1B or an L-1, they have their H or L visas that they could use to travel, but they've also filed for 485. They've also filed for adjustment, and they have advanced parole. So there's always questions: should we use the advanced parole? Should we use the H-1B visa to travel? What is preferable? There's really no issue as such. If you have both, you can use either one, either the advanced parole or the H-1B visa. Now, if you have the H-1B visa, the processing might be a little faster with the CBP when you come into the US. For the CBP, which is the Customs and Border Patrol, it's a little easier for them if you use the H-1B visa. On the other hand, if you're presenting the advanced parole, then they have to do additional background, a little bit of work at their end, so it takes a little longer, and they put you into what is called secondary inspection. So There's nothing, to worry. It's just that it takes a little longer. So that's, really, if you want to consider using advanced parole or H-1B, that's one consideration. And then the other question I get a lot is what happens if you travel before your advanced parole? So if you're waiting on your advanced parole and your advanced parole applications now get, they take about 7 to 8 months to be adjudicated. So in the meantime, if you need to travel because you have an emergency or things like that, what should you do? So the good thing is that for people who have H-1B or L status, they don't have to worry about the 485 application itself being abandoned as long as they are traveling in H or L status. Okay. But otherwise, your 485 application will be abandoned if you travel without getting the advance parole. So the ideal course of action would always be to wait for advance parole. And if you don't have any underlying status like H or L, and you absolutely need to travel, maybe because you have an emergency in your home country and things like that, there is an option for applying for something called the emergency advance parole. So back in the day, it used to be easier. You could just walk into a field office, USCIS field office, which they have all over the country, and you could present some documentation of your need to travel, and you could ask them to issue you a temporary advance parole. But now they've changed the process, and it's become quite convoluted. So you first have to call USCIS on the contact center line. Good luck getting through to an agent, because it takes, like a lot of navigation through different prongs to get through to a person. So you speak to an officer with USCIS, and then they will schedule you for an appointment, which normally they will not give you for the same day. It will, take a few days, in some case, some weeks also for the InfoPass appointment. And then you go to the field office with that appointment, and you present your proof of emergency, and then they will issue you the advance parole. So it's become rather onerous. Preference would always be to make sure that the person is in H or L status, because you don't want to be confronted with emergencies like this and not being able to travel. All right, so I think that is it from me. Back to you, Shika.
Thank you, Sharmila. Thank you, Dia, for the wonderful information and so much knowledge. Now we have, I think, some questions are there in the Q&A. So basically, we'll be sharing the details of all the speakers. And there's a question how to get slots for US business visa if mandatory business visit. So I think this is already that we have covered in the address. Or if any speaker like to answer this.
I think, as I said earlier, the business B1, B2 or visitor visa, which we are talking about, mostly after this month of student visa sessions getting over, they'll start opening up, and also with the visa consulates getting back into full-fledged availability. Please expect it to start happening next month or so, and please keep checking on the website for the slots.
Okay. So the next question is, if a student has qualified for Dropbox appointment filled in his DS 160 and now decided not to apply for F1, what process must be followed? So I think this is the whole process or guide which they need to take from.
No, I can just give an input. If he has qualified for a Dropbox and he is already about to submit and he doesn't want to apply, he can just withdraw his application, where he can, in the application, there is an option to postpone or a withdraw option, where the student can just withdraw his application, and that should be fine. That should not be a problem.
Okay, thank you. There was a news that US Embassy will start student visa online basis like other countries. Any coming plans to change the new pattern? I don't think so. There's any. So I don't think.
No update as of now. Yeah, no update as of now about that.
Yes. The e-visa, we don't have any clarity about it. Like other countries, whether it be about Canada or Australia, right now there is no clarity. But I think there is very remote chances other than the Dropbox. Like the Dropbox has already been introduced.
Okay. Let me know if any expert here for EB5 investor visa. So
So Shika, we can address that. Our office routinely processes EB5 visas.
Sure.
EB5 visas, we generally schedule a consultation because it is a very involved and extensive petition.
No
We generally
problem.
ask them to
Yes.
schedule a consultation. But you can give out information if anybody
We
wants.
will be sharing all the speakers' details. So the participants, our members or guests, they can contact directly. And in case if they not able to contact, they can send their details to IACC. We can forward. That's not a problem. So there's I'm in US on visitor visa to see my daughter and returning to India next week via London. Do I need to take RT-PCR before boarding? How to answer this? I don't know.
No, currently, when you're coming back into India, you don't need a RT-PCR, but please check the day before or a couple of days before your journey, because the rules keep changing. Because I traveled last week and it was not a requirement.
Yes.
And around the same time, I am also going to travel back, so we have to keep checking.
Yeah.
Currently, there is no requirement as
so
such.
It's better to check 2-3 days before and at least a day before when you're going. That's better for everybody.
Yeah, so it's better to check 24 hours before. Like, most of the regulations and rules, what they're saying is it has to be within 24 hours, any changes that has been happening. So it's always good to check within 24 hours once again before leaving.
Okay.
But 24 hours, Shamila, it is difficult to get a RT-PCR.
So no, not only RT-PCR, like what I'm talking about is any changes, like,
verification and
any changes.
Right.
It's better to check within 24 hours.
Yes,
so,
I accept.
There's a question possible to share speakers. Yeah, we'll be sharing the email IDs. Then already one question which is already answered. Can you put some light on business visa process? Already answered. Okay. So I think almost all the questions are answered by the speakers. And now it's time to thank. And it's time for vote of thanks. So I really thank all our speakers, Mr. Surya Ganesh Balmiki, Ms. Nirupama Das, Mr. Subhakar Alapati, Ms. Sharmila Karingula, Ms. Dia Matthew. So I really thank all our speakers for your time, so much information, such a informative address by all of you. And I think members have taken full benefit of this, and we'll share your details. And I request all IACC members. So if you mention that you are from IACC, because all our speakers are our members, so that within the family, you'll get definitely great help and support. And thank you so much to all of you. And I also like to congratulate my chairman, Dr. Ramkumar Rudrapatla, and my vice chairman, Mr. C. Narayan Rao, for initiating and organizing this important session for the benefit of members. And last but not the least, I thank all members and guests for attending this session. And thank you one and all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Shika. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shika.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Shika.
Pleasure meeting you all, actually.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.